We are so used and so accustomed to them lying. We're so accustomed to them obfuscating that we kind of get to a point where we shrug. So I hope that we don't shrug, right? Absolutely targeting Black women, absolutely targeting Black folks in particular, indirectly. That even as we joke our way through trauma and we joke our way through being targeted, that we don't lose track of what was still the thing, right? So if I said one bill, I would say ending Citizens United, period. Period. We have to get money out of politics. All of these escalatory acts or an act of an authoritarian government, right? And I think it's important. I'm gonna just say it plain, right? We have allowed this in other administrations. So it's no wonder that Trump would see, for instance, Biden sending additional weapons to Israel,
Right.
right?
Today, I am joined by Congresswoman Summer Lee from Pennsylvania's 12th District. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to talk mostly about that incredible moment back in July when you brilliantly outsmarted Republicans to force a vote to subpoena the DOJ to release the Epstein files. But before we jump into that, there are a few stories that are making the rounds, some of which are breaking, and I wanted to get your reaction. Is that okay?
Sure. Hopefully I know what they are, depending on how breaking they are.
Okay, well, I mean, just this morning, the August jobs report was released by the BLS, and it's even worse than the already low expectations that most of us had. Specifically, the month of June was revised and now shows negative numbers for the first time since December 2020. What is your reaction to the way that the job market is reacting to Trump compared to record job growth under Biden?
I mean, well, first off, it's not even it's both the market reacting to him and him reacting to it, right? He's fired folks. He is part of the problem, right? He's one of the folks who's eliminating federal jobs, right? And you know what we call them good Black jobs. So that's why we see, record numbers amongst it, right? Record numbers of Black women, left out of the job force right now, Black folks in general. So there's that portion of it. They aren't necessarily job creators, but they are fabricators, right? They fabricate things, and that's what they do. And they do it for as long as they're able to get away with it. And then when it comes to late, like, oh, June was revised. We are so used and so accustomed to them lying. We're so accustomed to them obfuscating, to them not creating opportunities for anybody except for their millionaire, billionaire friends, that we kind of get to a point where we shrug. So I hope that we don't shrug, right? Aside from today's news around this, right? I think within the last few days, right, the report came out that there are, for the first time and for a very long time, more unemployed folks than there are jobs to begin with. So even folks right now who want to work, right? The whole myth of people don't want to work. They're looking for jobs. People are looking for jobs. They're looking for opportunities. And we would also like a job that, pays a living wage, that ensures that we can live in affordable and appropriate housing in our communities, right? But none of these things are being answered right now. Instead, we have, you know, I'm not sure what we have, but we have it.
Yeah, just to give some weight to the statement you just shared, that is from a report by the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There are 7.18 million job vacancies compared to 7.3 million people looking for jobs. That is the worst that we've seen since the pandemic. And something that you did touch on was the way that this has harmed Black people specifically. And when we look at the federal workforce, the Trump administration, and I want to say, appears to be targeting Black women because there have been 319,000 Black women who have lost their jobs working for the federal government since Trump has been in office.
Yeah. And I mean, you know what they often say, right? Proving discrimination is, like a dog chasing its tail. But when you know, you know. And if you know that 20% of the workforce, the federal workforce, are Black workers, then when you target, I almost said it, right? When you target Black jobs, right? No, but when you target federal jobs, then it stands to reason that you are targeting Black workers. You're targeting those places where Black women, particularly, went because the private sector was so hostile to Black workers, because it has been so hard for Black workers to maintain jobs in fields, first of all, right, that discriminate against them, sometimes openly, or jobs that the microaggressions are so aggressive that it becomes hard to want to stay in these places. Federal jobs, was that security, right? It provided the Black community with not just security, an entry point into the middle class, stability. This is a job that pays well, a job that has anti-discrimination laws that were enforced on the book, that you are more likely to have your benefits, right? You can have health care, you can afford to live in communities that are thriving, right? So yeah, targeting those types of jobs, absolutely targeting Black women, absolutely targeting Black folks in particular, indirectly.
The Black unemployment rate is about to be double non-Black working folks. The Black unemployment continues to rise with every job report that comes out. And we know that Trump on the campaign trail was promising Black jobs. I mean, president
No,
wasn't one of them,
see,
but the Black jobs were supposed to be one of the jobs apparently.
See, but that was no. You know what? We make the joke about Black jobs. We sing the songs, right? But it's also important that even as we joke our way through trauma and we joke our way through being targeted, that we don't lose track of what was still the thing, right? And the thing is that he was just obviously trying to divide Black folks, the Black community, from other communities of marginalized folks, right? So Black folks versus Latinos, Black folks who are, descendants of American slaves versus Black folks who are coming or immigrating more recently to the country, right? That was that division point. And it didn't just stop with, Trump's campaign, right? We're seeing it in just our cultural lexicon, right? We're hearing it on TV. We're seeing more people pick up the language of that sort of division, right? This us versus them, and we know that, like, right, the Republicans, conservatives, white supremacists, they run off of that, right? That's their coffee, right? If they can wake up and convince somebody that somebody is trying to harm them, that somebody's trying to take something from them, right? That is their daily cup of joe. But for other communities, marginalized communities who start to mimic and adopt that, that's frightening. And it's so important that we push back against that, because we know statistically, we know with evidence, we know anecdotally that no one is taking anything from Black folks except for white supremacy, right? No one's taking anything from us except for the people, the oligarchs, the corporations, the corporate overlords, right? Those are the folks who are taking from us. But if they
Are
can
you
keep
saying that
each
it's
other,
not are you saying that it's not trans people and immigrants?
I mean, are they oligarchs? Are there any? I don't know if there are any trans oligarchs. So I don't want, but no, and we know that, right? But we got to remind our people of that, right? It's such an easy target, and it's such a cruel target. And just as a group of people who have been targeted in heinous ways throughout history, that we have not become our oppressors is the biggest flex. We should not start now.
Before we move on from this, I do, because I'm always looking for an opportunity with all this chaos and volatility. Is there an opportunity here for Democrats? What should the party's response be to all of this?
When I frame all of this, let's name it, right? We are full speed, head high in authoritarianism. Like, we are there. This is an authoritarian regime, right? History tells us that. The current conditions tell us that. And it stands to get a lot worse. If I were, directing Democrats, what I would say is that the first thing that we have to do is choose our master. I say this all the time. Democrats cannot choose, we cannot serve two masters, right? We cannot be the party of the people, the working class people, marginalized people, and also be the party of corporate PACs, corporate super PACs, right? We can't do both. And people, they suss that out real quick, right? They notice it. And even as we talk about Democrats' messaging problem, right? It's not a messaging problem, it's an authenticity problem, right? You can say whatever you want, but people know if you are bullshitting them. People know if you're talking about something that you don't actually believe or have never lived. So we need Democrats to commit themselves to being one or the other thing, right? If we're fighting fascism, then we need to do it. And the only way to do that is with the working class, it's with the people. Power is still vested in the people. So I would also say that, the final failsafe in our democracy is not going to be a Democrat, us, especially not going to be a single Democrat. Don't matter how popular they are. Don't matter what title they have. They are not going to stop authoritarianism. We know that, history tells us that, but the people will. So we got to really quickly learn how to empower people, how to organize them, how to mobilize them, right? How to get them feeling like they have, the ability to change course. And if we are not investing, like putting big energy into that, then I think that we're doing the wrong thing. Big energy into organized labor, big energy into our movement communities, big energy into organizing, people's money to
Mhm.
stand up against the people who are, taking our country from us.
Yeah, and I'm gonna push back just a little bit. I'm not really push back because I did ask you what the party's response should be, so that's a messaging question. What should the plan be? If there was one action that Democrats could get behind, because this is usually my biggest gripe with the party, capital D, is w- what is the one thing? If we could pass one thing, if there was one piece of
Oh,
legislation
you want to say one
beyond.
piece of legislation? Oh, see, because so now we're just looking at it differently. Because my one thing was that my one thing was
Mhm,
embracing the fact that our democracy is undergirded not just by Democratic lawmakers passing bills, but by
mhm.
people exercising their power. Right now, we don't have the House, the Senate, or the White House or the Supreme Court. So if I said one bill, I would say ending Citizens United. Period. We have to get money out of politics. We have to neutralize the wealthiest interests that we know have nothing in common. Whatever we're looking for, whatever we need. Grocery bills too high, right? They profit off of that. Your housing is too high, they profit off of that, right? Transportation systems, infrastructure, right? All of that, all of these things. You can't afford your bills, your medication, right? The climate crisis is just exacerbating while the oil and gas industry runs away with profit, 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 profit. And then they know and they've learned since the Citizens United case, and not just that case, but they've learned that the biggest investment they can make is in politicians. So I would say we have to. That is it. We have to commit ourselves to getting money out of politics in earnest, not just like, money out for thee, not for me, right? We all have to say that we have to get rid of it. And I would still stand by my last answer that we have to re-emphasize the importance of outside movement. We didn't get the Civil Rights Act. We didn't get the Voting Rights Act. We didn't get women's suffrage or rights for LGBTQIA folk. We didn't get any of that because like some brave politician finally saw the light. No, they were pushed into the light. So we got to do both of those things.
Absolutely. And I completely stand by both of your answers. I think it's a yes and situation. But I will give credit where credit is due. You're one of my favorite members of Congress to follow. You do a great job of responding to the needs of the American people, including yesterday. You announced the Closing the Meal Gap Act. Can you share a bit more about this and what you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, right now, me, right, congressperson, you know, I go to the grocery store and I'm shocked, right? It is increasingly hard for people to afford food. And then when you couple that with cuts to SNAP benefits, we're talking about the largest cuts in history. Coupling that with cuts to Medicaid, coupling that with the cost of just living, whether that be your housing or just everything around you, it is so increasingly hard for people for children, right? For children to afford the three, nutritious meals that they need every day. We have to start to answer that. And part of that, of course, we can talk about one bill, but part of that is, of course, just addressing this the cruelty behind the cuts in the first place. It shouldn't take, piecemeal legislation to say that people should be able to afford the food, right? That
Mhm.
food banks should be empowered to continue to run, but we shouldn't need them at the end of the day, right? That students, should get good meals and outside of school lunches, but that's where we are right now. So what we're basically trying to do is eradicate hunger. And because of massive cuts, we have to do them bill by bill. We have to do them, just one, you have to chip away, eat the elephant one bite at a time. But at the end of the day, this is all about how do we address that the United States is increasingly, right, a country of have a whole bunch and have almost nothing, including food.
All right, one more story before we get to the Epstein of it all. You're the first member of Congress that I've been able to talk to since this has happened. This week, the United States military carried out a lethal strike against boats in the Caribbean Sea, killing 11 men that they accuse of being Tren de Aragua gang members smuggling drug toward the United States. And this story, in my opinion, has gone largely underreported. Trump has all but labeled all Venezuelan people gang members and drug smugglers who are now able to be targeted with lethal strikes. At the same time, Trump has revoked TPS for Venezuelans and wants to deport hundreds of thousands back to a country that he also wants to wage a war with. So, does Congress, if you know, does Congress have any plans to take actions for this move that Trump took? And in your opinion, was this legal?
Because there are so many people who have bought the line of whatever Trump does that makes us safer is legal, is de facto legal. And that's just not true, right? That's just not true. That was a war crime. It is not a capital offense to be a drug smuggler, right? That's not even talking about the morality of it. It just isn't. There are processes that exist to keep governments, especially authoritarian governments, from executing uh, truly murders in plain sight like this, and then posting the video. But this isn't just that, right? We saw it with Iran. We see these types of actions. We see it in DC with the National Guard. And I say that because I don't want us to disconnect these things. All of these escalatory acts are an act of an authoritarian government, right? To say that the only laws that apply are the ones that are convenient to me. The laws that are not convenient to me are, they're flexible or non-existent or not important. And we just can't have a country of laws that runs that way. So do I think that the Congress is going to move? No, because I think that the Republican Party that holds the majority in the House and the Senate have abdicated their responsibility as a co-equal branch of government. I think they've abdicated that. And I think they did it long before this. I think they did it long before this. And I think it's important to say, I'm going to just say it plain, right? We have allowed this in other administrations. So it's no wonder that Trump would see, for instance, Biden sending additional weapons to Israel, right? We haven't declared war in decades. So to see that sort of overreach, why would a Trump, excuse me, who is an aspiring authoritarian, aspiring dictator, why would he not say that that's a line that I cannot just cross, but I can blow up? So it's so important that Congress reestablishes itself as a co-equal branch of government. It's so important that the international community establishes itself as a moral, voice, not just a moral voice, but a moral standard, that we hold the United States to the same standard that we hold other countries to. If there are countries that are allowed to live outside of the standard, then what is international law?
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty. Personally, it's really wild to watch. And again, I understand the flood the zone of it all, where every day there is something, and we're talking about Epstein, and we're talking about the jobs report, we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg having dinner at the White House, we're talking about Melania's AI task force. But the idea that Marco Rubio yesterday was in Ecuador and said to the press, he vowed that they will continue to blow up ships that come near the US that they suspect of being drug smugglers. That to
Well, what's the
me,
standard? How do we know if they're drug smugglers?
right.
They have not been captured, they have not been detained, they have not had a trial. So if we can just do that to foreign vessels, what is going to stop them from then saying we can continue to kill American citizens who we suspect of being drug smugglers? We can kill American citizens who we suspect of being criminals. And then of course the racism undergirding it is not quiet, not quiet. The way that we have treated not the Venezuelan government, Venezuelans, the way we have treated brown folks, the way we've treated folks who speak Spanish, right, is just reprehensible. And again, escalatory. That is the us versus them, that they are inherently unsafe. They are inherently criminal. And that's why we can deport them without trial. Well, sorry, because it's not deporting. That's why we can disappear them without process.
Well, hopefully something comes of this. Hopefully someone says something that's not, a independent journalist on YouTube. All right, now let's move on to the Epstein of it all. Back in late July, on July 23rd, you used your time in a House Oversight Subcommittee hearing on migrant children to introduce a motion to subpoena the DOJ. The motion passed with an 8-2 vote. Going into that meeting, which I was just floored by. Going into that meeting, was this something that you knew would work? Like, I got him this time, or was this just one of the many chances that you took to try and get this done?
That's a good question. So first of all, it was just not just a hearing on migrant children. It was a hearing on sex trafficking, right? On
Mhm.
sex trafficking children. So we thought that it was not just a perfect opportunity, but it made perfectly good sense. I expect my Republican colleagues to care about this because their constituents certainly care about child sex trafficking, whether it's through the immigration system, like this hearing alleges, or by a U.S. citizen facilitating other powerful U.S. citizens. It's time for them to prove it. Right now, Speaker Johnson is helping Donald Trump block the release of all the files relating to child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. If you want to take a stand against child trafficking, let's do it together. You can't say that you care about the safety of minors, that you care about sexual abuse victims and survivors, but then also completely ignore the elephant in the room. So we did, we worked with Ranking Member Robert Garcia, who literally had just taken the job. Like I think that man had just gotten elected, like maybe the week before, and immediately we were like, let's talk, let's figure out what we can do. And it is the committee. I'm gonna just say it. It is the subcommittee with the wildest group of people in it. Not on our side.
Mhm.
Our side's fine. On their side, right? On their side, it was all the folks who had publicly said that they want the Epstein files released. All the folks whose own base were leading the charge on the internet, talking about they want their members to release the Epstein files. So we looked at those numbers. Numerous members of this committee and this subcommittee have called for answers and transparency. So let's do something about it. Rep. Biggs has said, we want to get to the bottom of it. Rep. Mesa stated, I believe we need answers on Epstein. If 1,000 kids were trafficked, how is there only one accomplice? Rep. Perry has written to Pam Bondi on Epstein saying the American people deserve answers and justice, particularly in matters involving grave allegations of criminality and misconduct by influential figures. Rep. Boebert said, we deserve the truth about the Epstein files. And yeah, we definitely thought that if there was a chance to subpoena these files, this is it. This is the subcommittee. We're probably not going to get it anywhere else. And we got to take the shot. And it also helped that people were running out of Congress. That was our last day because Johnson had already canceled votes because he didn't want to do it. So we were the last folks doing business in the Capitol that day. Some of his people had already left, and our people were resolute. We were like, we'll change our flights. We're ready to go. We'll sit here all day. He tried to stonewall us. We're like, we'll sit here. And at the end of the day, his people were the ones who came back. Like they were like, oh no, actually, we kind of got to do this. So we thought it would work, but honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. I was also pleasantly surprised that we had the numbers to break some of their amendments, which has just never happened. It's just never happened.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a walk it like you talk it moment.
Yeah. This week, you sat with a group of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein in a closed door meeting on the Hill. What was that experience like?
Oh my, it was, it was deeply moving, but just devastating. It's devastating. It's been such a circus. This whole conversation is such a circus. And even when we were able to get that subpoena, it was already a media circus, but it is because people are disconnected from just like the human part of it. That at the end of the day, we only met with maybe about 6 or so, but there are hundreds to maybe 1,000 victims. Like we're talking the most, and I hate to use the word prolific because usually it's a positive connotation, but like the most prolific sex trafficker in our history who was not an enslaver. And so many people, these were kids, like these were young girls, and they talked to us about how, they had ambitions. They were like, I was an immigrant and I just got into this country and I needed a job and I wanted to go to college. Young women who were like, I, believed in, science and I just wanted to go to school. That was like the underlying thing. Like young girls who wanted to go to school, young girls who needed a job, young girls who were trying to take care of business. And here they just meet this wealthy mystery man who remind you, this is pre, Google. It's hard to even know how did this man even get this money? And then we talked, one of the women said, there were so many people involved, chefs, doormen, housekeepers, outside of the famous folks, just all of the people, the secretary, all these people who kept this operation running. They were like, I was in a room with I was in this house and there's so many people there, but I felt like a ghost because no one would say anything. about what he was doing to these young girls. So it was just chilling, but it was also disappointing because there was, the Speaker Johnson, who is like outside of Donald Trump, the one man who could do something, who is still stonewalling us, still not indicating to the DOJ that he wants them to, obey the legal subpoena. And but he's sitting there, acting contrite, saying that there will be bipartisan support. So that part was discouraging, but hearing the power, these women are calling out, they're calling out monsters, man. They're shaming the devil out loud, and then the devil started to immediately come out of their crawly holes. So when this is over, when this is done, right? That's all they want. They want this to be done. They want justice. They want healing. When it's done, it's going to be because of their bravery. And I felt that, and at that moment, I think all of us on our side realize like we have a mandate to go and get this done for them, to do it in a way that does not bring further harm to them, and to carry on their legacy of speaking truth to the most powerful, not just in our country, in the world.
We forgetting, and I say we generally, are we forgetting the victims in this because of the Trump of the situation? At the same time that victims and members of Congress were holding a press conference like Ro Khanna up on the Hill, yards away in the Oval Office, Donald Trump was calling this a hoax.
I will say yes and no. We are forgetting the victims because of Donald Trump, because of the sensationalism of it. You have Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, right? There are governments, whole governments involved, not even just like individual members of government, whole governments involved. This is probably like the most profound, speaking truth to power. It is a sex trafficking case, and it is so much beyond because of how many powerful figures were behind it. But also, this is just run of the mill. Society doesn't care about women, and society doesn't care about the victims and the survivors of sexual abuse. We saw that with the Me Too movement. We've seen it with R. Kelly and other powerful figures who are in the arts and letters, right? Other powerful figures in politics. It is a tale as old as time, right? These women and girls, and it's not just women and girls. Men are also victims and survivors of sexual abuse, but overwhelmingly, these women and girls, they come forward. When they come forward, they are beat down by society. They're beat down by the press. They have their reputations run through the mud. And now we're talking about women who are facing, again, empires, threats of violence, threats of death, threats of their livelihood, and then society doesn't believe them unless there is a benefit to it. So there's both of those things, and I think it's so important that we cut through that and again remind ourselves what it takes for women to come forward, for girls to come forward. And this isn't just about Epstein. There's 1,000 victims here, but there are millions who are silently looking for that courage or deciding that it's not worth it. And it's important that we move forward in a way that says your government is not going to be the biggest impediment to you getting healing and justice. You have Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, right? There are governments, whole governments involved, not even just like individual members of government, whole governments involved. This is probably like the most profound, speaking truth to power. It is a sex trafficking case, and it is so much beyond because of how many powerful figures were behind it. But also, this is just run of the mill. Society doesn't care about women, and society doesn't care about the victims and the survivors of sexual abuse. We saw that with the Me Too movement. We've seen it with R. Kelly and other powerful figures who are in the arts and letters, right? Other powerful figures in politics. It is a tale as old as time, right? These women and girls, and it's not just women and girls. Men are also victims and survivors of sexual abuse, but overwhelmingly, these women and girls, they come forward. When they come forward, they are beat down by society. They're beat down by the press. They have their reputations run through the mud. And now we're talking about women who are facing, again, empires, threats of violence, threats of death, threats of their livelihood, and then society doesn't believe them unless there is a benefit to it. So there's both of those things, and I think it's so important that we cut through that and again remind ourselves what it takes for women to come forward, for girls to come forward. And this isn't just about Epstein. There's 1,000 victims here, but there are millions who are silently looking for that courage or deciding that it's not worth it. And it's important that we move forward in a way that says your government is not going to be the biggest impediment to you getting healing and justice. That's where we are now.
Yeah. I have two more questions for you, if you don't mind. Just a few minutes ago, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social about this. He blamed Democrats and said that he has complied. He said in part, quote, "The Department of Justice has done its job. They have given everything requested of them. It's time to end the Democrat Epstein hoax." Your response: were the documents that the DOJ provided sufficient? Are they done?
He's a liar. The DOJ itself, his DOJ, the Trump DOJ itself has said that that was just a tranche. They said that they were going to give over the documents in tranches. Well, that was the only tranche we got. So him now saying that the DOJ gave everything is just a blatant lie because they themselves have said it's not everything. They themselves have said that there is more to come, allegedly. So he is so desperate. He's so desperate to turn the corner on this. And this ain't a Democrat issue. He is prolonging the pain that these women are enduring. His handling of this is exacerbating the pain. It is keeping them in the spotlight. He is keeping this in the spotlight, right? Pam Bundy said that she had all the files, right? The deal, the FBI hasn't even allowed these women to see their files. Like they haven't seen their own files. And we know that it's not complete, again, because the survivors have said it's not complete. They've said everything we need to know exists in these files. We have not subpoenaed the right people. And he knows that. And now he's calling it a hoax, right? This is no more, I said this yesterday, right? This is no more a hoax than apparently whether he was alive or not this weekend. And here he still is.
Some of the survivors who spoke on the Hill have said that in conjunction with pushing for the Epstein files to be released, that they plan on making their own list, their own Epstein client list, and submitting that for members of Congress to read on the House floor. Uh, do you think that that might shake some people up and cause further obstruction?
I think that hopefully, personally, I think that the threat of that should be compelling. It should compel them to get it over with, to get it over with. The reality is that members of Congress can absolutely go on the House floor with complete immunity and read anything, right? Well, we read truthful things, read anything. So there's no getting around this one. If they choose if they feel that they are backed into such a corner that they have to themselves release that file, right? That's first of all, that's shameful. That is just shameful. They shouldn't have to. But also, they've already revealed, things in court. They've already talked to the FBI. They've already, done all this stuff. The fact that we're still putting the burden on them because Trump's DOJ just won't finish this because Trump, who claims that there's nothing to hide, just won't finish this. Shameful. But yeah, no, I think if they have to write their own list, we are, having met with these sisters, you know, wanting to help them and wanting to help them find their resolution, but not just for their own sake, for all of our sakes, because there are people who are still walking. This ain't about Jeffrey Epstein alone. There are people who are alive right now who may have had some dealings with this, who may have been a part of this, who have not faced accountability. There are systems that have failed them. And if they failed those young girls, that means that they're more than likely still failing young girls. Because why would Jeffrey Epstein be special? Right? If it's happened before, it can happen again unless we decide otherwise. So yeah, I think that we're at the point where we have to do whatever we can to get justice, to stop this, to call out everybody who has had a part of this and make sure that they're not able to just move on with their lives and continue doing this. I'll tell you what, the victims, or excuse me, survivors, because I don't want to call them that, the survivors, they told us to follow the money, follow the banks, right? That this ring is so big. And that's what we intend to do.
So, I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is releasing the Epstein files, getting the truth out there is just the beginning of even more work to hold people accountable. The Hill just reported a few minutes ago that the Epstein discharge position is headed for success with a nudge from Democrats. Currently, the discharge has 216 signatures, just too shy of the number needed to compel the vote on the House floor. Do you think that this will be successful? And can you just explain for folks where everything stands now. Like, what even is this discharge petition,
Yeah,
and what can we expect to happen next?
certainly. So there are a couple moving parts, right? The subpoena that we secured could end all of this. The subpoena would compel and has is a legally binding compulsion for the DOJ to turn over all of the files, complete, full, unredacted, except for files pertaining to the survivors themselves. Hand those files to the committee. The discharge petition. Now what the discharge petition is because we know that Mike Johnson, who says that he wants to lead a bipartisan effort to support these survivors, to uncover the truth and bring about transparency. He could allow the bill to come to a vote, but he won't. So the discharge petition is a mechanism that we have to say the speaker won't bring it to a vote. So we'll get 218 people and we will compel it to come to the floor around him. Their petition or their bill would compel all of the files to be released to the public. It would be legally binding and it would give a deadline. I believe the deadline would be DOJ has to produce these in 30 days and give it to the public. So our subpoena to this committee, their bill to the public at 216, that means we need two Republicans. That's it, two Republicans. Now I'll say those two Republicans exist. And I know they exist because at least one Republican who voted for my motion to subpoena those files has not signed it yet. At
Mm.
least one. At least one other, if not more, joined us at that survivors roundtable, have walked in the background of their press conference, has, signaled out to their constituency that they believe in transparency and this is their opportunity to do it, right? So Scott Perry, for instance, he hasn't, I believe, as of when I left the House floor, he had not signed a discharge petition, and he voted yes on my motion. So I expect that he should be one of the people who brings us over the edge.
Hmm. Well, I hope that people, because we live in this social media bubble now where news is just happening all the time, and I post 30 to 35 times a day. So I know that people are looking for the news, but people don't usually understand what's happening. So as much as people may say that they want
Yeah.
Democrats to fight and they want Democrats to do more, I hope that the public, when they hear you speak, and that they dig deep and realize that there are folks like you who are using every tool. Like Donald Trump, he may use rare tools like the pocket rescission. Last week there are things that exist
Which many
for
believe is
lawmakers.
illegal.
Of I do as well, but I'm saying there are things that people reach for and look for to try and turn the dial, and I hope that folks realize that folks like you are in office. You are doing the hard work of trying to find these moments. Like back in July, I just will never stop giving you credit for that. And when all of this is said and done, I hope that you are given credit for being one of the leaders in this movement.
Again, the credit, it isn't even for me, right? I'm grateful that I was in a position as ranking member of that committee to lead that charge. I'm grateful to the folks on the committee with me, my colleagues who stood ground with us, who, said, I won't go home right now to my family because this is more important. But mostly I'm grateful for the folks who have been just in the trenches, those survivors, their teams. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine what it would be like. We talk about speaking truth to power. And I'm gonna tell you if I can real quick, two times in the last 2 months, I have had experience that has just like shrunken my idea of what courage is. Like I met with, folks who are Congress people from like around the Americas. Folks who's like their colleagues are now political prisoners, right? They face real death threats for going up against, authoritarians, like real. And I was like, man, that's courage. They show up to work every day. You keep running when you know that violence is not just like a possibility, but maybe a probability. And that's not just folks who I've met. We just know that around the world. And then I met these survivors, right? Who, again, shaming the devil publicly. And the devil isn't some like low level dude, who is the manager of a store. But we're talking world leaders. We're talking the wealthiest, most protected people on earth. And despite that, they continue to show up, not just for themselves, they show up for each other, but also they're showing up for all survivors and victims currently and formerly of sexual abuse in ways that the system does not care about, protecting folks against that in ways that, like, my colleagues don't always step up. So, like, we're taking our lead from them. So at the end of the day, when it happens, it will be because of them. It will be because of them. It won't be because of our subpoena, though. I'm hopeful that that subpoena, coupled with just the momentum, will compel this to come to a head, right? But those women, no, they have driven this, they have led this, and because they kept their foot on necks, that's why Congress is reacting right now. May Congress react. May we take the opportunity while we still have it to do the right thing. But the window's closing. It's going to come out. It's coming out. We should be on the right side of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Congresswoman Summer Lee, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, brother.